Hi, I'm Texas State University President Kelly Damphousse, and happy 125th anniversary, Bobcats. This month kicks off our celebration of 125 years of Texas State history and legacy. And wow, we have a lot to celebrate. Today I'm here with Professor of History Dr. Ron Brown at our newly renovated 11th floor of JCK. And on a clear day, you'd be able to see Old Main behind us, where the first 303 students attended class a few years after Texas State was founded on May 10th, 1899. Except for Old Main, those students would not recognize Texas State today. Ron, you've been here, I think you said 49 years, and you said that you don't even recognize it sometimes, right? A lot of changes have been here. 125 years later, we boast 2 campuses, almost 39,000 students, and offer more than 200 degrees. We consider Dr. Brown to be our university historian. He's also the author of 2 books on Texas State's history, Beacon on the Hill and Up the Hill, Down the Years. And he's here today to talk about the milestones and the legacies of 125 years of Texas State. So Ron, thank you for being here. In your opinion, what are 1 or 2 of the major historic moments of the past 125 years that have really changed Texas State's trajectory?
Probably the first would maybe be when President Evans became the first president of the university, which was after the first principal of the university had been dismissed because he chose the wrong issue in a governor's election.
You know, there was a lot of history of that back in the early 1900s. The governor played a huge role in who the president of universities were all across the country, and so sometimes presidents lost their job because they got on the wrong side of the governor.
That's right. That's right. And then, of course, in 1969 is when the university became a university, and that changed, I think, the character of the institution in ways that lead to where we are today.
You've had the chance over the years to interview a lot of people that have worked here and gone to school here. What are a couple of insights you've had over that experience?
I think, first of all, that people have, love is maybe not the perfect word, but have really had a special relationship to the institution, both students and faculty, over this now 125-year history. I think a second thing is, institutionally, we didn't do a very good job of keeping our history until the 1970s, so that when I first started working on the history of the university, there was almost no records at all, except for the pedagogue, which was the student annual, and then various kinds of records like the catalog and so forth. But we hadn't, unlike other schools even in our system, we hadn't been very careful about the history of the institution.
Well, what's interesting when you look back at the history of most universities, oftentimes it's memos from the president to the cabinet and to the university that are the foundation, and minutes from board meetings, kind of the historical archives.
Right.
That's something that's kind of going away now because we don't publish a lot of memos, a lot of emails go out, and those emails disappear over time. And
that's
so
right.
I worry about the modern history being saved.
Well, I think that's...
And we don't have an annual anymore either.
We don't, I think that's really a legitimate concern for the modern period, is that documentation is going to be much harder. Maybe you'll certainly have more video documentation.
That's true.
Than you had in an earlier period. So things like this will perhaps survive, but the sort of things that we depended on in the past are probably not going to be as likely to survive.
You know, one of the things that's interesting about the modern American university is the impact that athletics has on the reputation of the university. And we had really great football programs in the 1960s and 80s, and we kind of waned a little bit and come back here. But what are your thoughts about athletics and the reputation of the university and how that's played a role in the history of Texas State?
Well, I think that athletics was, actually women's athletics was the very first sport.
Is that right?
Yeah, there was a women's basketball team featured in one of the early pedagogues. And then I think another piece of it is when Lee Smith recruited Jim Wacker, and I remember the first time I ever saw Jim Wacker, he was the coach at Texas Lutheran, and they just beat us badly. And so Lee Smith and the president was anxious to get him back as our coach. And then, of course, Bob Hardesty became the next president, and during the Hardesty years, we won 2 national championships in Division II. So there was a lot of enthusiasm, I think, coming out of the 60s and into the early 80s, although the interim had not been successful. And then later, in the modern period, we've improved our facilities and changed the location of the original stadium, which used to be the parking lot
Yeah.
by the Special Events Center. So I think those things are evidence of enormous change in terms of the facilities that we have, the extent to which community people, students, and alumni come back to the game. So you can now go to a game at the baseball diamond, or you can go to the softball diamond, or you can go to the renovated stadium, which is now seating over 30,000 fans. And the Special Events Center, if you haven't been there and you're an alum coming back, to work in a basketball game would be great, because it's not the same old unpleasant seating that used to be characteristic of the earlier.
I remember seeing a picture recently of a basketball game that was taking place in Strand Arena, and I thought it must have been like an old gymnasium or something like that the picture was taken, but apparently there was a big wall in the middle of, or at the end of it,
right,
where there's now seating, and we've changed all that now. So
yeah,
it's really,
so now it's round or oval, as the case.
Yeah, I thought, what gymnasium were they playing that game in? And said, no, that was right here.
Yeah,
but,
that's right.
They renovated that
Well, they used
space.
to have commencement in the old gymnasium, which was where the music building is now. So those are things from long ago when things were totally different. But that is actually where Lyndon Johnson signed the Higher Education Act.
In the old gymnasium, which is now our music building.
Right, which is now the music building.
I remember hearing a story about it. Apparently it was a day like today. It was supposed to be outdoors, and it was kind of rainy, so they moved inside and they pulled out the coach's desk and actually signed it on this ratty old steel case desk or something.
Well, the desk is actually at the LBJ Center here in San Marcos, and it's on loan from the university. But it actually, I think, was a desk that had been used by the registrar at the time, and it had just been carried down there. So anyway, because of the weather, and they did it down at the old Strand Gymnasium.
One of the interesting changes at Texas State has been the growth of enrollment over time. We were, for a long time, relatively small. I was talking to an alumnus last night who said that we had 12,000 students when his daughter went here, but when he went here, we had 2,500 students.
That's right.
And you have like kind of this hockey stick look at enrollment now. We're almost 40,000 students this fall. When you talk to alumni, what is their sense about the change of the university?
Well, I think one of the things that they're very pleased with is that it still seems to be a place that is accessible to them and to their children. I think that's one of the distinctive accomplishments. And I think maybe we trace it back to the fact that in 1903, when the school started, this was really sort of an isolated little community.
Yeah.
It was not easy to go to Austin or San Antonio, except maybe by train. So they were a part of the community. Students were a part of the community. They lived in student housing, and I think that's been preserved over the 125 years, so that faculty here are enormously receptive and responsive, and I think students really appreciate the role that the faculty and staff play in their education. I think it's the distinctive feature of Texas State.
Well, I could talk history all day, especially, again, it would have been such a great shot with the old man in the background. This is such a great view here, but I feel like we're in a tunnel somewhere right now,
right.
underground. But thank you for sharing a bit about the history of Texas State University with us. Thank you for what you do to kind of keep that history alive for us.
Well, thank you.
And those books that you've written were great inspirations for me to kind of get a flavor of the university. I do go back, the pedagogue is online, and so I go back
right.
periodically and read messages from the president, and I see some of the faculty and staff who worked here to see those names kind of pop up. It is interesting to capture a sense of where we've been, what our legacy is, to help us plan for what we're going to be, which is tomorrow. And so
right.
Thank you for sharing that with us.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah, absolutely. So anyways, I hope that learning a little bit about Texas State's history will inspire you to join in the many events and activities on the San Marcos and Round Rock campuses during our 125th anniversary. Can you imagine 25 years ago even talking about what's happening in Round Rock, for example?
That's totally total change.
And what we're doing with community colleges around the state and so on. So things are changing a lot. You know, we've created a website just for the 125th anniversary where you'll find fun facts, a Texas State timeline, and a calendar of events as well. Just go to texasstate.edu and click on the button on our homepage. All right, everyone, State's up.